Good morning or good afternoon. This is subsequent recording of my talk. The chosen one is boring. I presented this talk this May 2026 on FedCon, the event for all science fiction fans. And throughout this talk, you will see fan art illustrations done by my wife, Kateřina Machitkova. So let's dive into it. I hope we will find something inspiring here. Here are some hashtags about this talk. We will talk about storytelling, creative writing, creative methods, visual discovery. I hope it will be really inspiring. So let's start with classical quote from the movie The Matrix because it fits a situation of creative writers exactly. Morpheus said that there is a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. And many people may have opinions about writing, but creative writers, those are the ones who must walk the path. And every individual path is different, and each path must be walked with a real commitment. So let's take that commitment seriously. Let's swallow that blue pill and let's see what we will encounter. When it comes to creative writing and also critique of writing, 20th century literary culture heavily depend on logical analysis. It was because psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud tried to logically analyze unconscious through symbols. Jungian psychology came with archetypes, shared patterns between characters, and these traditions were relatively going very deeply into these things, but in popular receptions, the whole understanding was flattened and sometimes turned into simple checklists. And there was a belief that reader analyst must keep distance and dissect the text. So stories have been later experienced through a logical filter. And there have been many psychoanalytical schools. Each of them explained problems slightly differently. Each of them claimed, maybe not directly, but in between lines, that this is the single perfect methods. And the same way, there have been different schools of story analysis if we look at those different authors. And market offers many writing guides. Authors dissect story structure, analyze tropes, provide formulas, schemas, recommendations. Well, this can be useful for beginners at the very beginning, but always remember that this is not any ultimate truth. And problem with these different types of analysis is exactly that current pop influencer culture can easily misinterpret these things, especially when they try to come up with one and only single recipe for everything. And there are many recipes, many schemas, many templates, many systems, many methods. Snowflake, top-down, fractal method, save the cat template of chapters and events, 7 essential narrative arcs, and also many frameworks for characters. So we can find 12 main archetypes, 16 personalities, enneagram of characters. Well, this is useful if we want to understand our heroes, but can be dangerous if we try to fit our heroes into these categories as a cages. And exactly this problem happens when influencers see these helping frameworks as rigid rules, which is not true at all. Majority of those books about creative writing, they prefer top-down work. like define the plot, define archetypes of characters, define basic objectives of all characters, define the map of story development, and then write systematically. Okay, this is nice. This is exactly fitting architect type of writers. And those architects are writers who really need to build everything into smallest details before they start writing. But again, you can find influencers which will torture beginners with this. Oh, you have to do this way, otherwise your results will be bad. And one particular template stands up from all this mess and is discussed many times, and it's the hero journey template. Book The Hero's Journey, written by Joseph Campbell, was originally meant more like academical work. But later it was used by George Lucas in his Star Wars, and even later Christopher Vogel turned it into template for creators. And unfortunately, although it was originally meant in positive way as help for creativity, some creators used it almost as fast food template. So it's now main formula behind many blockbusters. And again, we can find videos from influencers with almost checklists like, does your character experience this or that? Okay, you must add this. And it is not how this hero journey was originally meant. It was meant as understanding, not as rigid rules. And another problem which beginners writers face is actually a requirement that stories must be original. Problem is that with this logical approach, stories are treated like technical patents, and therefore they are condemned if they are not original enough, and repeating existing ideas was viewed as failure. Something like, oh, your story is not new at all because 20,000 years, one caveman in one forgotten cave already told that story, so you are not original. This is not how storytelling actually works throughout centuries and millennia. So don't be overwhelmed with this approach. This is not the right way. I will discuss it in further slides. And since 20th century mainstream culture was actually formed mainly by men writers. We have one particular commercial hero archetype, strong dominant alpha male. This was character how male writers imagined ideal male character. And there have been these sentences like stay strong, never show any weakness, mission first, trust only yourself, use cool, cutting humor to defeat your enemy. And stoicism was used as shield against destructive emotions because emotions have been predominantly seen as dark and destructive. But this approach led to very schematic characters, which we now see as really boring. And this classical chosen one. Because logic was dominant in those stories, the whole universe was seen sort of as a logical machine. And if there was some disruption in this logical structure, again, because of dark emotions of some villain, and there have to be chosen one who actually comes and restores the order. So this character was driven by a single tragic past event like death of parents, the lost kingdom, and the lost treasure, the lost whatever. And journey of that character was predestined, so that character was fulfilling sort of blueprint of that journey, and it all functioned almost like a computer program. So after seeing the same schematic several dozens of times, it was all really boring. And this combination of your story must be original and these predestined characters led sometimes into absurd combinations. Because no matter how many characters or plots you use, at some point you actually have no other choice than to make some really strange twist if you want to be original, no matter what it costs. So we had seen very absurd twists and strange surprises in story plots, unnatural combination of characters, and here that old Luke Skywalker tossing away his old lightsaber is, I think, a very memorable moment, which is exactly such absurd twist. And if story did not work, those creators tried to patch it with more violence and death to make higher stakes. And again, violence was shown as product of dark emotions breaking the logic. But at the end of 20th century, mainstream cinema experienced a big change. And I picked up two movies which were important for me. Of course, you would have your movies which depict this turn for you. First of them is Saving Private Ryan, and it showed very realistically brutality and pain of war and emotional breakdowns and sufferings. Yeah, well, it was not exactly new. It was already depicted in other movies, but those other movies were not exactly mainstream. They have been seen as avant-garde, which actually means ahead of time. So we already have seen movies which were ahead of time, and now this Saving Private Ryan actually accumulated these things and showed them on big screen, which at least for me was a really important pivotal moment. And second movie I chose is The Matrix. Here we have classical chosen one, Neo, shown in absolutely new way, at least for that era, because Neo is full of doubts and weaknesses. He's sensitive and more feminine, masculine balanced, and he does not want to be chosen one. And there is that amazing scene with that old woman oracle, and she says to him, "Oh, sorry, boy, it's not you." And Neo is actually relieved that he is not the chosen one. But later he decides to act because he wants to protect, he wants help. So uh, this is that moment when chosen one turns against his predestined path and decides to choose on his own terms because he feels the urge, not because he is predestined to do it. But again, as I mentioned, it was not something really new because in literature written mainly by women writers, these things have been discussed much longer. So Ursula Le Guin or Toni Morrison or Octavia Butler, And they created strong stories which were exactly as it was marked ahead of time. Fortunately, 21st century brought new attitude also into psychology, and psychology discovered somatic approach. I mean mainstream psychology. So I listed here two books. They are both controversial. I completely understand. Underlying neuroscience is disputed, and there are many discussions about it. But what is important for creative writers is that these books, they bring a vocabulary for somatic experience. And they also warn that it must be done safely because we carry many traumas. This somatic understanding is finally revealing what people do with stories because we are not terminators, detached and analyzing. We are not seeing life as computers analyzing everything. Viewers and readers, they experience story emotionally. They dive into it emotionally, which means that writers must focus on true emotional experience. And only this somatic whole body understanding brings deep experience. And authors who discover these somatic feelings, they then describe the experience. They do not guess, they do not copy, they describe what they feel. And this is important for connection between writer and reader. Because after all, creativity is an emotional process. It's driven by emotion and intuition. And great authors, they share their emotions in stories. Great actors, they actually live the emotion in the moment. There are now schools for actors and systems to teach actors to really live those emotions in that scene, not to pretend, because it would be funny in these days if actor would just pretend. Also, great filmmakers, they feel if a picture is good, they do not analyze it like one third, second third, half of that picture. No, they simply feel if the picture is good. And great directors, they the same way feel if the story works. For example, James Cameron mentioned several times in Behind the Scenes. Oh, we discovered in post production that a particular scene did not work, so we had to go back and reshoot it. Otherwise, that story would be not strong enough or would not fit. And few words about this whole body experience. Why whole body experience? Problem with logic is that logic sees life and existence through tunnel vision. And this tunnel vision is very limited. Writers need to describe feelings in the whole body terms, like, oh, I had a bad gut feeling about it, or my heart says something, or my skin feels like uh, this vocabulary is older than any neuroscience and is used also in old stories. So we need to really feel emotions which we want to describe in whole body. And why in whole body? Because our whole body is very sensitive. We can regularly read about the second brain in the gut. We also have some neural network around the heart, and we have distributed neural clusters all around our body. So we really, in those strongest moments, feel emotions through the whole body. This is why those emotions can be so overwhelming and they escape any logical explanations. And true about good stories is that logic is not always required. because authors and audience they share emotional connection. Both sides immerse emotionally into the story, and audience can often forgive logical consistencies if they feel that story is strong, but they cannot forgive emotional emptiness. And here, Star Wars, I think, example which fits perfectly because especially three oldest original movies of Star Wars, they are purely emotional experience. They pretend to be technical, they pretend to be logical, but if we try to analyze them, we end up with questions which are impossible to answer. So we must experience these stories purely emotionally. Another example for me is, for example, supernatural series. There are many logical holes. Those guys are living off the grid without any issues. But those stories are so strong that we do not care about that logical part because we want to experience those emotions. And the same way, we now have new sensitive heroes in mainstream cinema. They are uncertain, wounded, full of doubts, transformed through experience. And that wound of our hero is no longer seen as flaw to be overcome because it is something which motivates their behavior. Here I picked Bilbo from The Hobbit. You name your own characters which will fit your feelings better. But for me, Bilbo is a very nice example. He is weak and sensitive, and he acts cleverly. He is empathetic, and is able to understand everyone. And that way, he solves even very complicated issues in very soft way. And we also have new storytellers for these new stories in this new era. We have much more women writers and writers of colors leading the way because these gender and biographical facts of authors they are important. This is the background which they bring into the story. And this is also the reason why these new stories feel different. And creators finally also speak openly about that fallacy of originality because everything is actually inspired and it always was inspired. For example, James Cameron said in his masterclass, every filmmaker stands on the shoulders of those who came before them. Meaning everything is inspired by some existing ideas. Creators take those ideas, adopt them, combine, elevate them, show them in new context with different characters, with different point of view. And here is also this second famous quote, sometimes credited to Pablo Picasso, but it was actually written by Thomas Eliot. Immature poets imitate, mature poets steal, meaning those immature, relatively good artists, they copy the surface, but those great mature artists, they really take the idea in scope of old logical requirement of originality. It is actually seen as stealing, but they transform that idea into something new. And this is the way how storytelling was done by millennia. But of course, we must be cautious. We must find balance because every approach has some pros and cons. Logical systems, they help us to see bigger picture because without bigger picture, story can easily lose coherence. But logic cannot help to describe emotional experience. And if we would want to construct a story only logically, we can be easily lost in labyrinth of options, labyrinth of characters, and this is not the good way how to create emotionally strong story. On the other hand, somatic methods, they can give us a direct emotional experience, but we can also easily be lost in the labyrinth of traumas. We can turn story into description of traumas, which is, of course, not the right way how to communicate with readers. So we must have these two approaches in balance. And biggest true about creativity is that creativity also always means some type of suffering. Because no matter which approach we will use, logical or somatic, it will lead to some suffering. Uh, we will have doubts and crises and blocks throughout the way. Uh, Logic can lead into logical chaos. Somatic approach can lead to emotional chaos. And some authors, they sometimes try to solve it with very strange, empty, awkward irony. And problem with irony is that if it is used as escape, then it is simply just an escape. Those authors, they try to avoid both logical suffering and emotional suffering, and they pretend to be above it, but true is that such story is avoiding both of these problems. We also must understand that creative process is usually messy, and that nice top-down approach, which I described in previous slides, is sort of nice myth, but it's not achievable in real life in that clean, nice, straightforward way, because we always have to deal with a lot of unknown aspects. And the whole development will be full of so-called hockey stick, meaning a very slow progress at the beginning, and that beginning part will take a long time, and only later, when we have enough experiences and enough material and enough ideas, we can finish work much quicker. Uh, and then we ask ourselves why it took so long when I wrote it at the end so quickly. Because this is how creative process works. And we have also very different writing methods. Every author has their own method, and the best metaphor here are those captains from Star Trek. We have seen many different types of captains and leaders throughout Star Trek series and films, and each and every one are different. And if they would be asked to write a book about how to be a good captain, every book would be slightly different. And this is exactly what we see by successful authors. Every author has their own creative method. So, for example, Stephen King sees himself as archaeologist doing excavation work, and he says that stories are fossils and they must be very patiently discovered. On the other hand, Ursula Le Guin talked about rhythm and sound. She said something like, that paragraph or that chapter must sound right. It must have right flow of that sound. George R. R. Martin, he describes himself as a gardener, and he says that he's planting seeds of stories and let them organically grow. which unfortunately could mean that they can take a really, really long time. On the other hand, J.K. Rowling, she is typical architect. She needed years of planning, writing background stories of characters, creating world rules before she started to write anything for those books. And this is probably the reason why she is also so rigid in some other aspects, because she wants to have everything tightly planned and fitting those plans. There are many other methods of different writers. So we can see on these examples that there is no one size fitting all. And to show something in more depth, I chose two methods. One of them is Hayao Miyazaki's creative method. I think we all know his amazing Ghibli movies. And he talked about his creativity quite openly. He starts with very vague ideas and he must feel the way through the story. And initial phases of every project he works on are full of anxiety, doubts, and even procrastination and running away from that story. Because he needs to get new inspiration and he works without any written script because he sees this as limits for imagination. And he works only with images, sketches the most vivid moments and ideas, even though they might not even seemingly fit yet into the envisioned story. And that way he cleans his creative attic and he allows new ideas to come and he submerges fully into flow of creation. And that way, new ideas step by step fill the gap and the full story emerges. Second creative process is Disney Pixar. And this is more industrialized, but also showing that creativity is not about rigid planning mostly, because they also build those movies step by step. Every great film by Disney Pixar starts as a simple idea. They formulate a simple pitch which shall describe the top level idea of that story. For example, the story is about a girl with magic power to make winter and her struggle with it. This is pitch for Frozen. And when we see that movie, it's it's there. It's that movie is full of it. But it also means that they had to formulate this pitch and follow it throughout the story. And they start by describing key moments they already envisioned and create from these key moments first very basic script of that story and storyboard. And this simple storyboard is then converted into a simple film, which is full of static images with a very basic voiceover. And creators watch it repeatedly and improve it. They also show this testing storyboard film to other creators inside the studio, collect feedback, rewrite scenario, update storyboard, create new version of that static test film. And this process is repeated multiple times. They iterate over that story until they feel it is good enough to start animations. But even if they already develop animations, nothing is carved in stone because their goal is to create the best and also financially successful movie. So they still add corrections. Characters can change during development. For example, Elsa in Frozen was originally envisioned as a villain, but when creators get song "Let It Go" from composers, they actually seen that character has much bigger potential. And we can, in that first movie, see some parts animated with that old vision of Elsa as a villain. Those animations are darker, and they only later adjusted them for this new character. But it made that story absolutely great. At least I love it. And creators repeat testing screening. They also do testing screening for public. And the results of those testing screenings can significantly reshape story. Zootopia, as I read, was originally a story about the cynical fox Nick, but feedback from those screenings was very critical. So they changed the main protagonist and they put forward that idealistic rabbit Judy. And again, I think it's now a much better story. One word about these creative methods, which I see as important. You can see how deeply they want to make story working, how they want to improve every character and the whole plot to make it emotionally strong. And there are also some movies which are built completely on that strange irony, but this empty irony, again, this is not a style, it's a fear. And we can see it especially in Marvel culture. And I think this is the reason why Marvel movies done by this classical irony formula are falling behind because every time when there is some moment of real feeling, something going deeper, it must be undercut by a joke and some very simple, I would say even teenagers like irony. Uh, that way, in old days, creators avoided the risk of looking foolish, but in these days, it is really old relic, and it does not fit how audience actually experience stories. So, my suggestion is do not fall into this trap of this cheap irony. It's not creativity, it's an escape. With all these things said, we can summarize it the same way as it was done in Kung Fu Panda, when Kung Fu Panda was trained with different teaching methods, and he was supposed to get unlimited powers by reading the Dragon Scroll. But when he opened it, it was blank. It was just reflecting his image. And only later, when his goose stepfather told him that there is no secret ingredient in his soup of secret ingredients, only in that moment, Poe understood there is no secret ingredient at all. It's all about us really deeply walking the path. We must be serious about it, what we are doing. And this was all what this was that true Poe discovered by looking in that empty scroll. So we are on FedCon convention. We celebrate this year 60 years of Star Trek. So let's make it more Star Trek-ish. Our creative writing should mostly look like as Vulcan and Romulan reunification. Because Vulcans, they focus on logical approach as a core value and they are really serious about it. And they are best at keeping logical structure. But Romulans, although they are the same species, they went a different way. They preserved emotions as a core value. And they are really that serious about emotions. We can see it in those stories. So, both these civilizations are like extremes on that spectrum of what we want to achieve. So, we must reunify Vulcans and Romulans into something which will fit our creative feelings, because neither of these methods, neither logical nor somatic, can do the work alone, because they would always fall into some type of extreme. So we must become our own creative method. It's the highest true when we see all those descriptions of different methods of different authors. Those authors, they are those creative methods. They do not blindly follow something. They found creative method fitting them. So we must build out creative method. We must put some Vulcan logical understanding into our method and also Romulan emotional discovery. Learn about logical structures, learn about somatic work with emotions and traumas. And we must do these things safely. AI can help slightly with that logical part, but we must have deep emotional understanding of plots and characters. Uh, I talked several times about visual discovery, and I think this is the best way also for creative writing, because some authors they often talk about mental film of story. Architects, writers, they visualize, deconstruct, and readers will most likely visualize the story too. So, for our writing purposes, it is the best to discover the story visually. And hence, this talks about mood boards for scenes and characters, which is a great help for us at the start of that creative process. And later we shall put those scenes which we already envisioned on papers as annotations and simple sketches if possible. If we are not that experienced in drawing, okay, just annotations with some highlighted words or sentences, it can help, but putting it visually will help us to see the structure of story. And this way, we will get rid of blurred monsters. It may sound funny, but if we keep some ideas only in mind, they are like blurred monsters because they do not have shape and we can be easily confused with them and we cannot work with them properly. By putting them on screen or on paper, we give them at least some starting shape and we can improve it further in further iterations. And that somatic experiencing must be done safely. Because when we dive into our emotional world inside our body, we can easily discover some heavy material because there could be past traumas which can resurface during that work. We can also find some imprints of transmitted family traumas. So we must also employ logic to say us in some moment, it was enough for today, let's relax. And if we find some real traumas, it will be probably a good idea to consult a therapist. And last but not least, AI can help us with logical part. But we must see AI properly. AI in these days is mostly like this C3PO robot from Star Wars. If they wanted something more complicated from C3PO, it was always a mess. C3PO was able to fulfill only very simple, very straightforward requirements. And this is exactly how AI works in these days. If we put something too complicated into it, we will get some rubbish. We must use it for very specifically formulated, focused tasks. And we must always understand that AI cannot give us real descriptions of emotions. It can only repeat what was written about emotions in that training data which were used for creating that particular model. I had another talk on FedCon about using AI for creative writing. It's called Beyond AI Generated Rubbish. And here I dive much deeper into these questions. And last slide for today. I repeat what I already said several times. Real commitment is necessary. We can succeed only if we are really serious about our goals, because great results require great effort and great struggle. And either way, creativity is about different types of suffering, but it is also about learning. And we shall not fall into that trap of empty, awkward irony because it's just a cheap escape. It will not give us, neither us nor the audience, anything new. And that's it. That's everything for today. I thank you very much. I hope you found something interesting and inspiring. You can freely use whatever ideas from this talk, but those fan art illustrations, they are copyrighted by my wife, Katerina Machitkova, so it would be possible to use them only with her agreement. Uh, and thank you, and see you maybe next year on FedCon.